Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 6th of October, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, some news out of Cloudflare today in a thread posted by Micah Zoltu here, where he asks, why is Cloudflare censoring static files hosted on IPFS? Historically, you have been a strong proponent of censorship and have tried to avoid censoring unless you absolutely have to. The code, which is what is on IPFS, is explicitly not sanctioned. And this is referencing the fact that Cloudflare is censoring the IPFS, the Tornado Cash code that's hosted on IPFS. Now, we know, given a recent clarification from the US Treasury Department, that this is not required. GitHub put the code back on their website, right? Because it is not required as part of the sanctions. So why is Cloudflare censoring here? Look, I don't think they've replied to this. I don't know if it's still censored at time of recording, but I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about the implications here and everything surrounding this. I know I've talked a lot about the Tornado Cash sanctions before, on the refuel plenty of times, but there's one specific topic that I want to dive deeper into, or specific kind of variable here that I want to dive deeper into, and that's the one of people not knowing what to do. Like, this is the issue with all these sorts of things. Like, this is the issue with financial regulations. This is the issue with the SEC not giving guidance to teams, whether their things are security, or like what to do to not be a security, or what to do to be classified as a security, or, all these sorts of stuff. No guidance, things like that. There's different kind of regulations per country. So basically, it's really hard to do anything on Ethereum because Ethereum is a global network. So we see DeFi apps censoring their front ends for US users. And then we see some going really, really far by not even airdropping their token to US-based investors and users, right? So there's all this confusion. So who is this actually helping? Like, what crimes are being prevented here? Who is being helped by this? Who is being protected by this? It doesn't do any of that. Like, I'm looking at all of this and I'm just seeing fragmentation. I'm just seeing frustration. I'm seeing people just confused over why this is happening. And I'm seeing a lot of people not understanding why and how this can happen. Like, there's, I think Lyra Finance, which was talked about in the Discord channel, started banning US users, or not allowing US users to use their platform or use their front end. And I explained, well, that's, it's a front end ban. You can just use the back end infrastructure if you want, because that's still decentralized. But like, even saying that, I kind of felt a little bit gross saying that, because I'm like, I can't just keep saying this to everyone. I can't be like, oh, just go use the contracts, bro. Just go interact with the thing on the chain. Like, that's not a scalable thing. Yes, other people can build front ends on top of these things, but I mean, Lyra, as it exists today, just as an example, is not big enough to attract developers who want to build those sorts of front ends and things like that. And we're not there yet. Obviously, it's going to be a slow journey. But just saying to people that, oh, it's okay, like, if you're a US person, you can just use the, a different front end, or you can just use the DeFi contracts. I don't think that's enough, because, like, at the end of the day, as far as I know, there is no actual legal requirement for these platforms to bar US users. They're just doing it because they don't want to get, they don't want the long, reach of the US, law, or I guess they're sometimes referred to as the world police, reaching them and going after them and making their life miserable. So what you're really just getting here is that massive chilling effect that I've spoken about plenty of times before, where the government doesn't really have to do anything. The regulators don't have to do anything. They just scare everyone into submission. That is not freedom, right? That is not what a democracy should be about. Like, if we are always talking about, we're in Western democracies, they're free, you're free to do what you want in the confines of the law, that's all well and good. Like, I'm happy with that. I think that's an amazing system. Obviously, it has its faults. No system is perfect. But, it gets even worse when it's like, okay, well, people are trying to follow the law, they're trying to follow the regulations, but the thing is that a lot of this stuff has no clarity around it. Could you imagine if you went to the government, just as a hypothetical here, you went to the government and just straight up asked them, is murder illegal? Like, as the most obvious example, and they just said to you, I don't know. I don't know, is it illegal? Or isn't it illegal? Maybe you should treat it as being, illegal or not illegal, just in case you get in trouble for murdering someone, right? Like, that's what they're doing with these financial regulations within crypto, especially. They're basically sitting on their hands saying, maybe it's illegal, maybe it's not, maybe you're doing something wrong, maybe you're not. It's up to you to figure it out. And the default that people will do is obviously take the path that doesn't end up with them getting in trouble. So if someone tells you murder may or may not be illegal, well, you're just going to basically say, or just basically go with the default of, well, I'm not going to murder anyone because what if it is illegal? Then I'll get in trouble, right? And you can see how this extends to the crypto space with these regulations and with these DeFi teams or these teams building DeFi products not wanting to take the risk. Because even if it isn't technically illegal, to prove that would obviously be costly. And if it ends up being illegal because they weren't able to fight this in a court and the regulator won or something like that, they'd be on the hook for something that to them is easily avoidable because they can just do a geo block, right, on their front end. They can just say, okay, we're just not going to allow US investors or users because we have no clarity here. So let's not risk it, so to speak. Like, that's how insane it is. And I don't expect that to change anytime soon. The US has always been like this when it comes to financial regulations. Like, for a very long time. I went back and looked. It's been like this for a very long time. And it just got worse and worse as time went on, especially in the digital age, because of the fact that the law moves extremely slowly. Regulators move extremely slowly, right? And the digital age, especially crypto, moves so quick. It moves incredibly quickly. Like, it's funny how long it took for proper tax guidance to come out about crypto, for just like the most basic things you can do in crypto. Do we have any proper tax guidance around DeFi, around what happens when you wrap your ETH in, wrapped Ether? In some jurisdictions, that's classified as a capital gains event or a capital loss event, depending on if you gained or lost, but in others it's not. And you could argue, you would have to go to court to argue this if the tax office came to you, but you can make the argument that it's not, because when you wrap your ETH into wrapped ETH, it's still the same asset. Yes, you're getting a different token, but the asset remains the same. Like, wrapped ETH and ETH are one for one. Like, there's no change there in the underlying token. It'd be like putting your dollars into a bank and then you just get like JP Morgan dollars, for example, because technically when you put your dollars into a bank account or put your fiat into a bank account, you get an IOU from the bank, and that's what you have when you do internet banking and things like that. That's just numbers in their system. Like, that's not actually them giving the cash physically to someone, right? Whereas with crypto, it's digital cash, so it is like that, but at the same time, it's the same thing. Like, you're just converting your ETH into wrapped Ether, which allows you to use it within DeFi, but it's not a new asset. So that's an example of something that still has no real clarity around it. There is clarity from specific bodies, and the tax officers can usually give clarity, but the thing is, it's not legislated by that point because it takes forever to get new legislation in. So what it is, it's basically maybe this is this, maybe this isn't. Here's our guidance, and that is good, and to a certain extent, because at least it gives you something to use if you had to fight it. You could basically say, well, here's the tax website saying that this is how they treat it. Yes, technically it's not legislated like this, but this is a government body saying this, this, and this. You would have a really good chance of winning that case. But the problem is that you'd have to actually go to court to do this, and you have to spend all this money to do it when it should just be clear. And I know there's a lot of complexities around this. It's very hard to be clear about certain things. But the way that it's been happening in crypto across every institution, SEC, CFTC, OFAC, no matter what it is, there's just no clarity at all. Like, there's nothing, really. I mean, I think the tax office would in the US at least, would probably be the one that's given the most clarity so far. And why do you think that is? Oh, well, because the government gets money out of it. Like, it's, like, I think it's pretty obvious why they would be, okay, maybe we should give clarity here so that we can actually collect more taxes. Whereas these other institutions, the organizations, they don't care. For them, it's like, well, let's scare everyone into submission and let's go after the people that didn't basically do what we scared them into doing. Let's say that this was a security. Let's find them. Let's collect some money. So it really, I mean, it boils down to money and power at the end of the day, like everything, really. But I think it's very important to realize that these things are happening and that they will continue to happen, and why you see things like Cloudflare here, centralized US-based company, censoring these files hosted on IPFS, even though there is literally no legal requirement to do it. And going beyond this, the US Treasury Department has actually given clarity as well, saying that there's no requirement here. But I guess they're erring on the extreme side of caution, or maybe they just aren't aware of this, which is even worse, right? I would say. And on top of this, I've just been talking about the US predominantly here. every single nation state, every single country in the world has different laws and regulations. That does not compute, that does not work with a global network, with a credibly neutral global network like Ethereum. And you can't actually enforce this on Ethereum itself. There are certain actors within Ethereum that will be that this enforcement will influence, such as I've been talking about the MEV boost block builders using the relays that are censoring. But the Ethereum network itself, what Ethereum is, which I'm actually going to talk about at the end of this episode as well, and all the builders on the network and all the validators, everything, you can't force them to do your bidding. Ethereum is a global, decentralized, censorship-resistant network, obviously made up of humans, but there is always going to be a certain, I guess, like holdout or a certain, I guess, cypherpunk section of that community that basically says screw it to every government, even though there are obviously risks involved with that. But yeah, that's my little rant on that today. You can read this little mini thread from Micah for some more details on this. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so speaking of MEV boost, Terrence from Prylabs put out a tweet today saying, outsourcing your mainnet block construction to something like MEV boost increases block arrival latency. Terrence sampled 15,000 plus blocks between September 24th and September 30th on his home NUC with 300 megabits per second bandwidth. Normal blocks come in 1.158 seconds, MEV blocks 1.624 seconds, and MEV blocks result in a 40% slower to arrive time. So I'm not going to say I totally understand the implications of slower blocks here. I think the biggest implication would be that the efficiency of your, I guess, like client and of your rewards would be less than someone that wasn't running MEV boost, but it could end up just netting out anyway because of the fact that you're getting the extra revenue from running MEV boost here. But this also affects the whole network as well, right? Like we obviously want blocks to come in as fast as possible, and the slower they come in, the less we can actually do in terms of scaling the base layer. So scaling the base layer via maybe a block size increase, so to speak, right? Increasing the throughput there, because that would increase the time to arrival for blocks and make the network potentially unstable and things like that. So yeah, I mean, this is, I guess, like logical that it would result in something like this because you are adding an additional piece of software to the beacon chain, so that has to kind of do those extra computations and all that extra processing. But that's a pretty big slowdown, 40% slower to arrive than normal blocks here. It's not an issue right now, but it may become an issue in the future when we try to increase the I guess, like maybe block size might be the wrong term here. I'm trying to think of a better term, but maybe increase the throughput of the beacon chain and increase the kind of like data throughput of what needs to be verified. But it's good that Terrence has looked into this. It's good that it's being looked at. I think it's pretty cool because these are the things that inform certain decisions around certain protocol upgrades. Like this is the stuff that they look at, because at the end of the day, every protocol upgrade needs to be done in a way that won't actually negatively impact the network. I mean, that's obvious, but we don't know everything about every upgrade, and like a lot of the time, there are the things that we know, there are the things that we don't know that we know we need to know, and then there are the things that we don't know that we don't know, which are the scariest things, because like those you can't plan for. Those are typically like the black swans. But luckily, there's not that many of those things, but that's why you do these sorts of tests, you do these sorts of benchmarks and look at these metrics. You try to find as many of these things as you can, sort of like how we did it leading up to the merge itself. We tested everything we could think of, and then we found things that we didn't even know were there. There was actually one fun bug once around, I believe, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it had to do with TTD. But there was one fun bug that no one had thought of, and that came to light during testing because of the fact that I think a testnet was different to mainnet, or mainnet was going to be different to the testnets in terms of one variable there. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I do remember it happening because it was a pretty fun little thing, and I thought, well, okay, that's why we do our testing, right? But yeah, just a cool little tweet here from Terrence today. All right, so Etherscan has made some updates to their Blockscan Chat. It is now end-to-end encrypted. You have a contract address sign-in, and which means that you can sign in with smart contract wallets, I believe, and browser notifications, with more coming soon. So you can see the thread here for full details on all these upgrades, but you may have forgotten that Etherscan offers this end-to-end now encrypted chat that you can use with your Ethereum wallet, whether that be ENS or otherwise. It doesn't really matter. And you can come up here, you can see on the left-hand side pane as someone such like, obviously there's Vitalik.eth there. Obviously, I have sassel.eth. I think I have conversations in there from just random people trying to message me. I check it from time to time, and I'm like, okay, now, this is cool, but at the same time, it opens yourself up to spam if you're a, I guess, really public person with a public ENS and things like that. But for more of those private communications, I think it's really cool because it basically turns your Ethereum address into a way to communicate with other Ethereum addresses through now an end-to-end encrypted chat app. So kudos to Etherscan for building this and also improving it. I think it's pretty cool. All right, so for you developers out there, Optimism Kovan has been fully decommissioned. Optimism Görli is Optimism's sole testnet and the place to experience and test Bedrock upgrades firsthand. All the info is in this blog post. As I said, this was one for developers. Just wanted to give a shout out there for any developers that may have missed this. Maybe you're interested in developing on Optimism. Kovan has been fully decommissioned, is now offline. The Görli Optimism testnet is the main one. It's the only one that exists today, and you'll be able to go on there and test out all the stuff coming with Bedrock. So yeah, I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to go check that out. All right, so we have something new from Argent here today called Dappland, which they're calling the best place to find and explore leading dApps across the Starknet ecosystem. To find team info, audits, token information, and much, much more at dappland.com. This is really cool. I like the way this looks. It's even got a night mode, which I should turn on. It's really cool because you can see on the left here, you can sort by the different categories: on-ramps, bridges, DeFi, games, NFTs, whatever you want, and it'll show you things on Starknet. So let's go to games. Then we can see all the things being built on Starknet. We can click into one of them. Let's click into Influence. Actually, I've talked about them before. Let's click into them. We can see a little bit of a description, visit their website, links, tags, screenshots, and some information about when it was founded, if it's got audits, has a token, blah, 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 which I think is obviously very relevant information. There's things for DeFi in here as well. I mean, I'll let you guys go and check this out for yourself, but I love these sorts of things. This is how people are going to be finding apps. I've talked about discoverability before. We need more and more of these things as time goes on because there's just more and more of these apps popping up. And we need a way for people to be able to find them. I know Zappa has been working on a lot of features around discoverability within their app as well, which is very cool. But this is just another one. And right now, it just covers the Starknet ecosystem. I'm sure they're going to add other networks here, especially ZK Sync, since Argent supports ZK Sync. And obviously, ZK Sync 2.0 with ZK VM is coming out in, I think, 22 days now. It's pretty close. But yeah, you can go check this out for yourself. You can even add your own dApp if you're working on one here, which is very cool. But yeah, I like these sorts of things. I mean, it reminds me of those old internet directories that people used to need to use to find certain websites and things like that before the internet became extremely centralized, right? Where I was thinking about this today while looking at Dappland. I was looking at thinking about how many websites on the internet do we actually use? Like, we don't use that many websites day to day, I should say, right? And they're all the ones that everyone knows about. Like, for me personally, obviously, I use a lot of Twitter. I use YouTube a lot. Actually, I'm pretty addicted to YouTube. I love watching things on there. I don't use Facebook. I barely use Instagram. I use Reddit, Etherscan, obviously, and a few dApps here and there, right? But like, really, I mean, I'm a power user, right? Like, I'm on my computer all the time. So when you think about it like that, is crypto going to end up like that? Is Web3 going to end up like that, where we just have a handful of these apps that dominate? I think inevitably it will look a bit like that, just because of the fact that, I mean, human attention span is limited. Our, I guess, like, brain is limited in what we can remember. And also things tend to have that kind of like, that distribution of the top apps have a lot of the percentage of market share, and then you have like a long tail, which is fine. But it's going to be curious to see how it works within a decentralized ecosystem as well, because you could have the underlying app itself, let's say Lens Protocol, and then you can have like 20 different front ends built on top of Lens Protocol. Will we have equal distribution between those front ends? I don't think we will. I think there will be like a long tail of front ends that aren't really used, and there'll maybe be like 2 or 3 major ones. That's still better than the status quo. Right now, you can only really use Twitter with the Twitter app. They killed off a lot of the third parties that they supported. I think most of them have been killed off. So, and those third parties can't access the same stuff that Twitter can access either. With Lens Protocol, for example, there could be 2 or 3 front ends that dominate, but they're much, much better. And the switching costs are really low because your social graph, your profile, your data is actually stored on chain. It's not stored on the front ends themselves. So all the important information can be taken from one front end to the other, which I discussed yesterday, I believe. But that's the really cool thing. And that's the key difference between modern Web 2 and what the direction Web3 is going. So yeah, it remains to be seen how that will shake out, but I'm pretty confident that we're not going to just have these monolithic one, one website things that people go to. There will definitely be a handful of them that dominate, that maybe talk to one app. So for example, Uniswap dominates the AMM space, but there's many different interfaces to access Uniswap from. And I'd love to see a breakdown of the market share between the main Uniswap interface, the official one that's run by Uniswap Labs, and the rest of them. It'd be hard to get that breakdown probably, but I'd love to see it because it would probably shine a light on how the rest of this stuff will evolve here. But yeah, anyway, go check out dappland.com. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so there's a thread here today from Jonah talking about RPL and why so much of it is getting locked in smart contracts. Now, I don't usually talk about other tokens except ETH on the Refuel for obvious reasons, and I actually don't have much RPL. All the RPL I have is on Sassel.eth, and that's just sitting there. But the reason why I wanted to highlight this thread is because I know there's a lot of you that are very invested in Rocket Pool, both obviously monetarily and socially, and I just thought it was a really great thread breaking down why this is happening here, and you may be interested in it. As I said, like I don't have any RPL besides what's on Sassel.eth. I'm not trying to shill you on RPL, but the Rocket Pool project, if anything, I mean, is I struggle to like rank my favorite projects in the ecosystem. Obviously, Ethereum is number one, but like the things built on Ethereum, but Rocket Pool is like definitely right up there. I mean, I've discussed this before, but like, if I had to give one reason as to why Rocket Pool is one of my favorite projects, it's because it's basically just an extension of Ethereum. Like, it's got the same community members as Ethereum does. They're very aligned on their mission, their values. They've been building for such a long time, and they don't just shield the token in a way that makes no sense. The token actually has a core role in the protocol. He'll put together really great analysis of why the token should accrue value, or maybe shouldn't accrue value, the bull and bear case, so to speak. And I always like that sorts of stuff as well. And the reason why I don't own more of it is because like I'm just stacking ETH. Like I have nothing against RPL or any other token, but my money goes into ETH, as you guys know, a lot of. But maybe that's wrong. Maybe I should be buying RPL. I don't know. But again, it's not investment advice, not me trying to shill you on it. Just wanted to highlight this thread because I know a lot of you out there are really into Rocket Pool, and I know that there's a lot of people who are in the Rocket Pool community that watch the Daily Gwei Refuel. So yeah, just wanted to highlight that one. All right, so I just wanted to give a quick shout out here to Bankless, who has a brand new YouTube channel. Now, this YouTube channel is going to be focusing on shorter, bite-sized, maybe not as bite-sized content, but much shorter than the 1 to 2 hour episodes they do, and catered towards newer people in the ecosystem. So this channel is called, it's down here, Bankless Shows here. So you can go check this out, subscribe to the new channel at their Bankless website here, but Bankless Shows, basically, yeah, here it is, Bankless Show. So you've got the welcome from David Hoffman here, and you've also got a video that he's linked here. Yeah, so this first up video, so it's a video called "Why Crypto is Full of Scams," and it's an under 20-minute video. I thought it was really great. It obviously, I obviously thought it was great as well because he gave a shout out to Daily Gwei, he being David. So thank you for that, David. But it was great because he went through, I guess, some examples of scammers and grifters within crypto, and then went through some examples of people who aren't grifters or scammers, and explained and that kind of juxtaposed them together, which I thought was really cool. If I had any feedback to give on this video, as I said, I really loved it, was that the length may be too long, because the target audience is supposed to be people newer to crypto, people with maybe shorter attention spans, and I think that 10 minutes is probably the sweet spot for that. Obviously, most people aren't going to be watching 20 or 30-minute videos every day. You guys are because you love the Refuel, but I mean, I'm under no illusions that the Refuel is not going to be a mass market thing. I'm not trying for it to be like that. But if you want to appeal to the masses in this day and age, in this really fast-paced internet era, you need to have as bite-sized content as possible. So I think that 10 to 15 minutes is the sweet spot. I believe this video was about 17 minutes long, I think, which is fine. I mean, I don't actually think that's a big deal. But I'd like to see a bit shorter videos in the future just to capture more and more people. And I think that Why Crypto is Full of Scams is a really great video to start on, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from David and I guess Bankless generally here. All right, so Okay, I had this tweet up and I debated whether I should talk about it because it's not really got anything to do with Ethereum, but I think it's important, and I'll explain why. So this tweet from Jimmy Ragosa goes, most people involved in Lightning Network projects know that it is a joke, but are not allowed to say it or they would lose their job and become outcast from their own echo chamber. It's like mutually assured destruction where no one can tell the truth. So I'm not going to pick on the Lightning Network here. You guys know my opinion on that. But I think this applies to a lot of crypto. There are a lot of projects that are already dead, or dead men walking, or dead projects walking, zombies, dinosaurs, whatever you want to name it. And they've been dead for a very long time. But the top two reasons why they won't actually die off. One, they don't want to die off because they don't want to draw the eye of regulators. If you can basically show that you're still building, if you did a token sale, for example, if you did any kind of raise, well, you won't get the eye of the regulator as much as a project that basically just shuts down and gets called a scam, a rug pull, and runs with people's money, right? Whether it's because you actually shut down because the project wasn't working or because you actually rugged, it doesn't matter. Like, that's what everyone will always say, that you rugged, right? And secondly, it's because they don't want to be seen as a failure in the eyes of their community. Depending on how big the community is, I guess the more and more this is a thing. And I think within the Lightning Network itself, it's actually more pronounced because there is no token for the Lightning Network. There is no way that any of the people building on the Lightning Network have monetized so far. They've just raised VC money. They're actually not making any money from this. So they don't have the same incentive as, say, a project that has a token that they're hoping will just pump and pump and pump, and they can just keep selling it while they're quote-unquote building this thing out, even though they know that this thing doesn't work or is going to fail or just like doesn't have product market fit. It's very different with the Lightning Network because they don't, as I said, they don't have a token. It's not revenue generating. And if you had to make an argument, I mean, the token is Bitcoin, so to speak. So the Lightning Network itself attracts all the Bitcoiners, and the Bitcoiners talk about it as if it's like the best thing ever because they believe it's going to drive value to Bitcoin, the asset, when in reality, it hasn't driven any value to Bitcoin. It has actually been detrimental to Bitcoin, I think, putting all the bets of scaling on the Lightning Network, and it's benefited other solutions like Ethereum immensely. I think that if Bitcoin actually had its shit together and had a proper, credible scaling roadmap with multiple solutions, Ethereum would be in a much different place than it is today, but that's just not how it came to be, right? So I think Jimmy hits it on the head here when it comes to Lightning Network itself, is that like they're in an echo chamber, they don't want to be outcast, they're building this thing, they've been building it for so long, and they don't want to admit to the Bitcoin community that it's not going to work, that it's actually like not great. I mean, and when I say not going to work, I'm not saying it doesn't work at all. It does clearly work. I mean, sometimes, right? But it's not going to work for the world. It's not going to be able to scale to the world. It's not going to be the solution to the payments problem. That's just not going to happen. The Lightning Network is not that. But admitting that would be admitting that the last 7+ years of work that's gone into it was a total waste, right? Could you imagine the teams that have raised money from VCs admitting that? They're not going to do that, right? So I just thought that was a great little tweet highlighting how obviously it applies to the Lightning Network, but it applies to pretty much every project in crypto for various different reasons. But there is that tribalism as well you always have to consider. And I think that a big reason is definitely because if you shut your project down because it didn't work out and you have you have a token that's publicly traded, all of your token holders are going to say it's a rug pull, it's a scam, blah, blah, blah. And that will, I guess, like materially or immaterially increase your risk of regulatory action. You never want to do that, right? So I think that's why a lot of these projects are still dinosaurs. They're still just pretending like they're building, pretending like they're relevant, just so that they can avoid that kind of scrutiny. All right, last up here is a bit of a discussion. I'm not going to go too long on this because I've only got a couple of minutes left, but Sandeep from Polygon put out a tweet where he said, L1s are and need to be cults. Don't mistake them as softwares in your VC investment thesis. Now, to unpack that statement would take me a while. I'm not going to unpack the whole statement, but I think on the surface, Sandeep is right. L1s, or I guess like L1s like Ethereum, Bitcoin, any other L1 out there, for them to survive long term, they either need to be a cult or a religion. I mean, the lines blur between the two depending on your view on things. But that's because think about what the most enduring organizations have been in human history. They're religions, right? Religion is the most enduring thing. Nations rise and fall, empires rise and fall, religion persists, religion remains. Why is that? Because religion, when you really boil down to it, is just a set of shared beliefs, ideals, principles, right? And yes, they can become corrupted or they can be pure. I think that's just details that don't really matter at the end of the day. What matters is that you have, I guess, like this thing that people adhere to, and they follow it, and they believe in it, and they fight for it, both figuratively and literally, and they invest their money in it, right? And they invest their social capital in it. You go to church, or you pray, whatever. Ethereum, we do similar things. We don't pray and go to church, but there are obviously examples that you could draw and juxtapositions that you can draw there. And then Sriram here said that, here's his thesis. Contrary to popular belief, Nakamoto coefficient or otherwise, decentralization is not measurable by system performance, but by adherence of community to some principles. I couldn't have put this better myself, and I actually replied and I said, this is exactly right. Too many intelligent people in this ecosystem over-index on technical decentralization while completely ignoring social/cultural decentralization, which is arguably much more important. I just said to you that empires, nations rise and fall, but religion persists. The technology of blockchains will rise and fall, so to speak. They'll change over time, right? But what persists? What persists with all the changes that Ethereum has gone through? It's the social, the cultural, it's the community, right? It's the shared values, it's the principles. That's what persists over time, even as Ethereum evolves so dramatically. I mean, Ethereum literally had its biggest evolution ever. It went from proof of work to proof of stake. And that evolution was akin to Magikarp evolving into Gyarados. Like for those of you who understand the Pokemon reference there, you understand how massive of an evolution that is. But that is what happened. And yet, the Ethereum community remained the same. We have the same principles, ideals that we did before, even though we completely changed the consensus engine of the Ethereum network, which is obviously the thing. It's basically its beating heart, right? So when you look at it like that, you can draw all these parallels, and we have real-world examples over tens of thousands of years what the most enduring thing is. It's religions, and by extension, culture. Culture persists through nations, right? Nations rising and falling. Culture can be exported, right? Obviously, it can be imported as well to various different places. But I think that's just the way to look at these things. Blockchains, doesn't matter how technically decentralized you think you are, or you think that you can achieve, if you don't have social and cultural decentralization, a shared of beliefs, a shared of ideals and principles, you don't have a decentralized network. You don't have a decentralized network at the technical level, and you don't have one at the social level, because they definitely mix. They're not independent of each other. They're codependent. But I would argue, and I'd argue this very strongly, that social and cultural decentralization is much more important than technical decentralization. I think technical decentralization is an implementation of the social and cultural decentralization of a network. And on that note, I'm going to end it there. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.